Is Vietnam a racist country? First of all, let me tell you something about Vietnam. Vietnam is a beautiful country full of a lot of diverse people and also full of diverse tourists from all walks of life. And the people here treat you extremely nice and fair when it comes to the tourist areas. If you don't believe me, look at any YouTube video about Vietnam. Everybody's always talking about Vietnamese are the nicest people in the world. So what is this deal with Vietnam being such a racist country? Why are there so many videos on YouTube about being black in Vietnam, being Hispanic in Vietnam, being Asian in Vietnam, Asian as in like an Asian American? Why do these videos exist and why are there so many? Now, because I've been able to live in Asia for the last 10, 12 years, and I grew up in a Vietnamese Chinese culture, I have a good understanding of what the mindset is with a lot of native Vietnamese Chinese people, and also what American Vietnamese, American Chinese people kind of think when it comes to different races, being black, Indian, different Asians, and white people. And Vietnam being such a big, diverse country, as I said, there is not only just Vietnamese here. There are, I believe, over 30 minority groups that live throughout Vietnam. The tourists are white, they're black, they're Hispanic, they're Asian American people. So why does this keep coming up? And this really comes down to a simple thing. You have to understand the history of Vietnam. When you think back to Vietnamese history, you have the war. You have the French, you have the Russians, you have the Americans, you have the Chinese, and you have the South Koreans. Now, the one that stands out are Africans and Black Americans. Is there racism towards them? And I'm going to say, in comparison to how racism is in Africa, no. How racism can be perceived in America? No, not at all. You see these videos of passport bros, which is typically a Black American or an African coming to Asia to get married, to have a relationship, and you don't hear about the racism in these videos. You don't hear about the hate. Why? Because it doesn't exist. So the idea of the racism in Vietnam in general, when it comes to English teaching and being out here as a employee, typically English is seen as a white thing. It's coming from France, it's coming from the Europeans. And then America, Canada kind of following behind. I understand America is not the primary country of English in Vietnam. When people think of white English speakers, they think France, they think Europe. America is typically the Hollywood of everything. Oh, Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, stuff like that. So when it comes to being a teacher, and you'll see this on Zalo groups, you'll see this on teaching forums, they're always looking for white Europeans. They're always looking for Filipino women. They're always looking for African men. There's always a race term towards it, and this is just kind of the idea of how Vietnam sees everything. Now, with regards to Africa, there isn't a history. I've just told you about the Europeans, the Russians, America, all that. Africa doesn't have a history in Vietnam, so the racism towards like the black community isn't really there. It's more of a curiosity. It's more of a fear factor, where it's like, whoa, why are you so dark? And there's something to take from this as well. In the culture of Vietnam, if you've been here, you notice the girls are trying to be as white as possible. You can actually buy lotion that makes you whiter. And the theory behind that is the darker you are, the more you're relative to a farmer, the more you're considered poor. So it's very important to understand that darker people in Asia are considered more poor based off history. This doesn't mean if they see some black dude from Atlanta or from LA or from Nigeria, they're gonna be like, oh, he's broke. It's a curiosity thing. And talking to friends when I was out in Hanoi, we sat down. This actually came up in the topic because we were sitting with a couple of teachers that worked at a school out here. They both said the same thing. I never met a black person before. Is that racism, or is that, again, curiosity and just unawareness? So when it comes to racism in Vietnam, does it exist? Yeah, of course. Actually, Vietnamese and South Koreans, I think, are some of the most racist Asian people you'll ever meet. But here's the catch to it. It's not towards black people. It's not towards white people. It's towards other Asian ethnic groups. And when it comes down to education, racism isn't something that's really focused on. Again, it's more of a hate towards different groups within the Asian communities. So you're not going to see education that's talking about how white people are bad and how indigenous people are this and how black people are that. This isn't something that comes up, and this isn't something that's taught. Again, when it comes to darker people, and I'm not just saying black people in general, but this is also Indian people deal with this as well, is It's more of an unawareness. It's more of an ignorance. And ignorance as in just not understanding that there is more out there in the world than just Vietnamese, Chinese, and Lao people. I have a lot of friends that live in Saigon that are South Africans. When we would be out at lunches with different TAs and school staff, they would ask me, hey, where are you from? Oh, I'm from America. Oh, where? Hawaii. Where are you from? From Australia, Perth. Where are you from? I'm from South Africa. And everyone and all the Vietnamese look at me, you're like, you're not black. And you can see that's not racist. That's literally back to what I originally said, the lack of understanding history. So I don't mean to pinpoint this on the particulars of black colored skin, but that's the comment that keeps coming up in a lot of my videos. And when I researched the different videos, it blew my mind how many people are doing videos called Black in Vietnam. That's ignorant. That's ridiculous. It's not harder to be black in Vietnam. It's not harder to be white in Vietnam. A lot of people talk about if you're black, it's harder to get a job. But here's a fun one. If you're a Vietnamese American, it's almost impossible to get a job out here. If you are a Scottish white teacher out here, it is extremely hard to get a job. If you are an extremely heavy accented Russian that's white, it is extremely hard to get a job out here. When it comes to that base, it's not hard. If you go to places like Hanoi, which I strongly recommend, if you are Filipino, if you're Indian, if you are actually Vietnamese or Chinese American, or if you're from Africa, this is where typically you will get less perception. And the perception, what I talk about, is it's not the schools hiring people. Say, oh, well, you're black, I can't hire you. Oh, you're European white, I can't hire you. It's typically the parents. Again, the ignorance and the culture of Vietnam is English is a spoken language from Europeans. Europeans are typically white. So when they see somebody tan, when they see somebody Vietnamese American out here teaching, there's a misconception. And I knew a friend of mine, she worked at a school in Saigon with me. She was a Vietnamese American from Orange County. She couldn't keep students. And the reason for it were the parents were complaining. We paid for a native English speaker, not a Vietnamese teacher that speaks English. They didn't get it. And this is Vietnam culture. It's just a lot of ignorance. It's a lot of misunderstanding. So is there racism in Vietnam? 100%. I see it a lot. And again, it's usually within different ethnic groups within Asia. It's not typically towards white or black or Mexican people or Spanish people. It's typically within its own borders. And the biggest proof of this is go find a Passport Bro video. Some of the best videos I've seen, happiest videos I've seen, have just been black dudes from Cali, from Atlanta, from Georgia, from Florida, coming out to Thailand, coming out to Vietnam and getting married or dating out here and just saying how much they love it, how nice everybody is. If Vietnam is so racist, why are there so many of those videos? It doesn't make sense. So for you guys thinking that there is a racism issue out here, I beg to differ. There isn't. There's more of a misunderstanding. So if you are feeling that you're in that position of being attacked because of race, talk to people. Like literally just talk. If you tell a Vietnamese person, Xin chào quay, which just means hello, how are you? And you're black, white, Hispanic, whatever, they're going to say hello. They're not going to say, oh my God, it's one of those. Stop it. You guys are being ridiculous. Unless you're... So with that being said, guys, hopefully that answers the question is Vietnam actually racist? Till then, guys, I will see you again.